Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to chat with you for a few minutes. As you heard, my name is Denise Jane, or Denise Calizaya, for my Peruvian network. I have been in the States for about 14 years now. Came here to do an exchange program, went to school here, and spent most of my professional career in technology consulting and management consulting, so I relate with a lot of what was said in the previous presentation. About a year and a half ago, I accepted an offer with Google, and currently I head our technology implementations within our Google Customer Solutions. As you know, Google has a ton of different products. I particularly work with all of our advertising products. And I am very passionate about diversity and inclusion, and it's the reason I'm here today and want to talk about this topic. This is an area that is close to my heart because we are severely underrepresented, and I feel like we need to get the dialogue going in order to solve this problem. I personally have benefited tremendously from being in the field of science and technology, and I would want the same or even better opportunities to be available for other Peruvians or the Latin community in general. Some of you know that Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful to everyone. And when we say we want to build for everyone, we mean it. And in order to do that well, we need to have a workforce that is representative of the users that we want to serve. That is why equity, diversity, and inclusion are business imperatives at Google. They improve our own employee experience, make our products better, and also obviously provide a better user experience. And that's why we are committed to making some of this data public. Aligning a little bit on the terminology, I think a lot of us are familiar with diversity and inclusion terminology, but equity seems to be a little bit of a newer term. And equity refers to really making sure that we're driving fairness in all of our processes, the opportunities that we provide to all minority and non-minority groups, right? An example of this would be to make sure that leadership positions are available also to minority groups and that we are very well represented as well. Diversity, obviously the endeavor to attract and develop people from underrepresented minorities, and inclusion, making sure that those who we have recruited also have a good experience once they are in the company, right? Because it wouldn't make sense to spend all that time and effort and resources getting people in, but then if they're not going to have a good experience, you're going to experience a high attrition rate. A little bit of history on the Google Diversity Report. So we started publishing this about 5 years ago. We were the first tech company to make these numbers public. And the reason we made them public was to make ourselves accountable, right, for making sure that there is progress being made in this area. And I think that also originated a trend. So some other companies in the tech industry started publishing the stats, and we figured we can't really work at this alone. We have to work with some of the other companies. So that's the reason, mainly accountability and showing the progress. Some of the key learnings of having been publishing this report over the last few years. The number one learning has been that systemic change is what is sustainable change, right? Only a holistic approach to change is going to help us solve these issues. And what I mean by that is we can't expect to solve this issue of diversity and inclusion just by trying to create a diverse pipeline of candidates. We need to go back and address the root cause because we're not getting diverse candidates in the pipeline to begin with. The number two learning here would be data powers progress. At Google, we are obsessed with measuring everything, and I think the upside of this has been that we see data as a catalyst for change and helping us check how much progress we're making towards this cause. This allows us to, gather some insights about what is the entire recruiting process, where do we see the most challenges so that we can actually address them, or identify why we have a high attrition rate and what we can do to help reduce that. And then lastly, leadership accountability matters, right? If there is not gonna be consequences for the people who are running these companies, then you probably won't see a lot of motivation to change this. So I think we've seen a lot of progress, especially over the last year, but I think it has been primarily because leaders at Google have been asked and they are measured against contributing to this goal. They get reports on different aspects of the entire recruiting and employee experience, and it's their responsibility to, again, contribute to that broader goal of the company. A couple highlights from the report. So over the last year, we saw, this is the current split, right, of hires, meaning people who just entered the company in this period of time, where we see about 33% women and 66% men. This is an improvement of about 2 points compared to like a previous year. And then here you can also see the breakdown by the different ethnicities, different groups, right? To highlight here, Blacks and Latins have gone up over the last year. The other thing that we have seen when it comes to attrition, on average, we see that women actually are less likely to leave Google, and this is even better for women who are within the technology roles at Google, which is great news, right? Compared to the other minority groups. We also saw an improvement for Google's employees in the Latin community and Blacks. It's still above the average for the rest of the company, but certainly we have made some progress there. Here's where we have the breakdown. So if you think about 100 being representing the Google average, you see 81 being like, Asians are less likely to leave. Blacks are above average, and same with Latinx and every other resource group or minority group that we keep track of. Just in general, workforce representation, previously I had showed the hiring numbers, which would be the new employees. Here is a breakdown of the overall workforce representation that we have for, we have over 100,000 employees. So 31% women, 68% men, and then you also see the overall breakdown for the different groups. Something to highlight here is that we have gotten to increase significant representation, again, on Latin and Black employees. Now, as I was referring to equity earlier on making sure that we provide the same opportunities across all of the different groups, we're keeping track of the leadership positions, right? How many men, how many like Latin or Black we're having represented at the top positions in management. And this is an area where the numbers aren't very encouraging. We've been making good progress on attracting maybe more entry-level folks. There's a lot of diversity there, but certainly at leadership positions, we are seeing a massive drop. Now, and this is precisely why equity and the inclusion and making sure that people stay there long and that they see themselves, see their path to leadership, it's important. A conclusion here, I think there is a couple things to highlight. In general, our efforts have paid off. We have seen a good increase across the board of the representation of minorities. Where, we're seeing, again, triple for Blacks and quadruple for Latin groups. The problem we're seeing is that that's not keeping up with the rate of growth that we have at the company. Not only Google, but in general, the tech industry is growing so massively that even though you see an influx of minorities entering this industry, it's still, the percentages seem so little compared to the growth rates that we're seeing across the industry. And then the last point here is, something that I referred earlier to, just making sure that we have a holistic approach to this. I think for a number of years, the focus had been, let's get that diverse pipeline of candidates. And that's how we're going to improve diversity in our workforce. But what ended up happening here in Silicon Valley is the pipeline isn't really increasing, or at least it wasn't. All you would do, or you would see, is people who were working at different tech companies just jumping around, and maybe the numbers were changing in each of these companies, but the overall pool of applicants hasn't improved at the rate that we want this industry to grow. And that's why we have to go back to how do we address the root cause of this? And the root cause is we're not seeing a ton of people who are graduating from these communities in fields of STEM, right? And research has showed us that it is crucial that between the ages of 11 and 15 years, that is where you should solidify the interest in science and technology for people to really have a higher likelihood of pursuing a career in this field. Not that it's impossible if someone expresses interest after, but the highest likelihood is, again, between 11 and 15 years. And that's why we have expanded programs outside of just having to have a recruiting efforts and going back to establishing coding classes, science projects at high schools, again, with the hope that we are going to address that root cause, making sure that we expose minority groups to what it's like to have a career in the field of STEM. Right? Thank you.